Bruchim Abayim, good morning, Morai V'Rabotai. Continuing on Masechet Makkot, and we are on Daf Hey, Amud Aleph, on top of the Amud, starting a new Mishnah, Mishaleshin B'Mamon. Today's Amud is being learned, L'Schut Refuah Shelema, of Rachel Simcha Bad Nahid, Yael Bad Loren Esther Shoshana, and for Hatzalah of Arvin Netanel Ben Sonia. That you should hear good news, Be'ezrat Hashem. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
So we are starting the Mishnah, Mishaleshin B'Mamon. It's the Mishnah that we mentioned in the Masechta before, that when you have a group of Edim trying to accomplish a punishment for the person they are testifying against, and then they're found to be falsified Edim, how do you punish them? So it says, the Mishnah, Mishaleshin B'Mamon, if they were trying to have him pay money, they don't have to each pay the same amount, the entire amount of money. Imagine if they were testifying that Reuben owes Shimon $1,000, we don't say each one of them now has to pay Reuben $1,000. They pay each $500 and they're good to go. As long as Besach HaKol, Reuben gets $1,000, which is what they were trying to make him lose, that is fine. But says the Mishnah, but you do not divide the Makkot. You don't say, well, there are 3 Edim over here trying to get Reuben a set of lashes, so now we're going to divide the 39 lashes to 3, and each one of them will get 13. We don't do that. Each one of the Edim Zomemim gets 13 Makkot. Is not going to be good. Each one of them gets a full set of 39 Makkot, and that will be the din. So says the Gemara, Ketzat, if they testified that Reuben has to pay 200 zuzim to Shimon, and then the Edim are found to be Edim Zomemim, Meshaleshin Berem, then we divided, each one of them pays 100 zuz, and they're good to go. But if they testified that he needs to get Malkut, and then they were found to be Edim Zomemim, each one of them gets a full set of 39 Makot, and that's how it's going to be. Says the Gemara, how do you know that? How do you know that we don't punish them by Malkut halfway, but we do by Mammon? Says the Gemara, Amar Abaye. Abaye says, because Nemar Rasha b'chayeve Malkiot v'Nemar Rasha b'chayeve mitot bedin. We all agree that if 2 people are trying to get Reuben killed, they say, we know Reuben killed Shimon. And if they would not be found guilty, the Bedin actually would kill Reuben. And now a second set of Edim come, and they make the first cat of Edim, first group of Edim Zomemim. So now they're going to get killed. Nobody disagrees that the first cat, first group of Edim should get half a death. There's no such thing as half a death. If you're trying to kill the guy, we kill each one of the Edim Zomemim. That's Pashut. There's no such thing as half a death. And Malkut is questionable. Money, you could divide easily. Malkut is the question, is the gray zone. So it says, Abaye, I show you in the Pasuk how death and lashes are compared. So therefore, just like by death, you don't give half a death to someone, you kill them. Same is with Makot, that if they're trying to get him lashes, they will observe a full 39, each one of them, and we don't divide it. Says the Gemara, because by Malkut it says, Keder Rishato, right? Bin Hakot Harasha, it's called him a Rasha. The Pasuk calls the person that gets Malkut a Rasha. Ve'im bin Hakot Harasha. If he is deserving Makot, and we find by a person that murdered someone, also the Torah calls him a Rasha. I'm reading the pasuk from the side over here. V'asitem lo. V'lo tikchu kofer. It's pasuk bet over here. V'lo tikchu kofer nefesh rotzeach asher hu Rasha lamut. When he talks about a murderer, it says Rasha lamut. So you see, the person that is getting death penalty is called Rasha. The person that is getting Malkut is called Rasha. And hence, you compare the two, and just like by the punishment of death penalty, you don't say, well, they two together were trying to accomplish someone getting killed, so we give a half a death to... No, he killed them. Each one of them gets a full death penalty. So therefore, by Makot is also the same way. We don't say, well, let's divide it to 3 and give each one of the 3 Edim 13 Malkut, but we give him each one a full 39 set of Makot. So says the Gemara, just like we don't have halfway death, Afkan en Malkut lemechse. We don't divide Malkut either. Rava says, Ba'inan kasher zamam la'asod la'achiv veleka. Rava says, I know it from a different reason. Because we need it to be kasher zamam la'asod la'achiv. It has to be what he wanted to get his brother punished with. So if the Edim over here wanted to get Reuben, get a set of Malkut, each one of them has to get 39, because each one were trying to accomplish that Reuben should get 39 lashes, so each one should get 39 lashes. And one says, wait a second, that's very ambiguous, because by money also, each one of them is trying to make him lose $1,000. So each one should be paying $1,000 then. It's not. How does that make sense? So it says the Gemara, Yachi Mamon Nami. If that's correct, by Mamon, by money, you should say the same thing. Gemara says no. Mamon mistaref, Malkut lo mistaref. The Gemara says that Mamon, you get what he's getting out of it, the victim, Reuben, is mistaref. He gets 500 from this person, he gets another 500 from this person, so he took $1,000. But by Malkut, when you beat up the Ed, Reuben doesn't get anything, doesn't make a difference for him, therefore it doesn't add up. You have to give him a full 39 lashes. So the Bet Levi writes an understanding over here also. He says, when you have $100 and then another $100, when you have to pay $200, the second $100 does not hurt you any more than the first $100. A dollar is a dollar is a dollar. It doesn't, the combination of a second 100 on top of the first doesn't hurt any more than, every dollar is for itself. But it says by Makot is very different. When you get 1 lash, fine, it hurts. But when you get 2 lashes, the second one hurts more than just one additional one. You get 39, it's like fasting, right? Everyone knows that when you fast a 24-hour fast, the last 3 hours is what counts, right? That's when it hurts, actually. The first 10 hours is not that hard. Same is with lashes. So therefore, this one adds up, the other one doesn't. Because imagine if you have 39 edim, right? And you give each one of them 1 lash. That's not a punishment for what they were trying to get him punished with, that is going to go nearly to death and then recuperate from it. It takes 2 months to recuperate. Each one of them gets 1 lash in Chazak Baruch. That's not the sense. That's how the Bet HaLevi explains it. So says the next Mishnah. This is the Mishnah, by the way, that the Gemara in the very beginning, Daf Bet, said the Masechta should have started from. You remember how we jumped into Ketzat HaEdim Nasim Zomemim, and they want us to wait a second. First, tell me about Edim Zomemim before you tell me how they become Zomemim. And the Gemara cited this Mishnah that it should have really been the first Mishnah in our Masechet. So says the Mishnah, Ein ha'edim na'asim zomemim ad she'azimu et atzman. The edim zomemim do not become quote unquote edim zomemim until the second group, they defy the very core of the Edim themselves. In other words, if you have a set of Edim, and now they're going to be disqualified, it could be in many different ways. Let's take a testimony of a murder case, for instance, right? The two Edim come and say, we witnessed on 4th of July that Reuben killed Shimon. Okay? And this was in Los Angeles. So now you could defy this cat of Edim in multiple different ways. I could see a second group coming and saying, wait a second, you could not have seen that because Reuben, who you say is the murderer, 4th of July was with us in Paris, right? So he could not have been in Los Angeles to kill, right? That's not Edim Zomemim, because we're not saying anything about the Edim themselves. Or if we say, well, Shimon was with us, so he could not have been murdered on 4th of July because he was with, that's also not Edim. The only way that Edim becomes Zomim is like, I don't know, maybe Reuben killed Shimon. I don't know, maybe you're right. Maybe on 4th of July, Reuben actually killed Shimon. But you could not have witnessed it because you were with us in 4th of July in Paris. That's Edim Zomemim. So the Mishnah says, En Edim Nasim Zomemin at Shiazumu et Atzman. The Edim Zomemim only have the laws of Edim Zomemim, which we do to them what they wanted to do, if they themselves became Zomemim. Not that the Edut, the testimony, became Zomemim, but that they became Zomemim. That you could not have witnessed this, because you were with us. That's the only scenario. So says the Mishnah, Ketzad. Let's give an example, says the Mishnah. Amru meidim anu beish peloni sheharag et hanefesh. If they said Reuben killed Shimon, Amru lahem heach atem meidim, and then the second group comes and says, well, how can you say that Reuben killed Shimon? Sheharei ne'erag ze o ha'oreg ze, because you can't have seen that because the murderer or the victim was with us. Haya imanu oto hayom. On 4th of July, Reuben was with us, or Shimon was with us. That's en elu zomemim, says the Mishnah. That's not the case of Edim Zomemim. Yeah, they disqualified the testimony. That's true. Now you're no longer going to kill Reuben, but you're also not going to kill the two people who testified. That's not Edim Zomemim, says the Mishnah. Aval amru lahem, but the second group comes and says, Heach atem edim. How can you be testifying that Reuben killed Shimon on 4th of July in Los Angeles? You were not in Los Angeles even on 4th of, you were with us in Paris. Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, because you were with us in a different place. That becomes Edim Zomemim ve'neheragin al pihem, and the first cat of Edim, first group of Edim, will be killed, put to death, because of the testimony of the second group of Edim. Ba'u acherim ve'izimum, afilu me'a kulam yeharegu. If you had even 100 groups of Edim, and they were nizom, in other words, the first group comes and says, Reuben killed Shimon. So then the second group comes and says, no, Reuben, you could not have seen that because you were with us. Right? So we kill the first group. Then a third group comes and says, Reuben killed Shimon. And the second group, right, says, you also were with us. Right? And then a fourth group comes and says, Reuben killed Shimon. And the second group says, you also were with us. Right? Even if you have even if you have 100 groups, then you still have, says the Mishnah, Kulam Yarigu. All of them will be put to death. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Istetid Hizu. Says, no, we don't kill them. Because at some point, you're like, wait a second. Everybody was with you in Paris on 4th of July? The whole world was with you. The first group was with you. The third group was. The fourth group was. You can't have that. That doesn't make any sense. At some point, says Rabbi Yehuda, said, wait, these guys, they seem like they have set themselves up to just kill everyone that comes and testify against them. They are liars. And we don't listen to them. Now, the Mishnah surprisingly says, Ve'eno nerag ela kat rishona bilvad. We only kill the first group. Right? In our example, when the first group says Reuben killed Shimon, and then the second group says you guys were with us in friends, we only killed that first group. Even though that the third group comes and says the first group was right. Reuben killed Shimon on 4th of July in Los Angeles. We only killed the first group, but not the third group, and the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth. So now the obvious question, of course, is, if you're telling me that istatitize, that this group, we suspect them to be liars, so then why are you killing the first one if they're liars, right? That we're going to deal with in the Gemara. Now, this is Rashi's understanding. Rabbeinu Hananel is a little bit more complicated. Rabbeinu Hananel learns that the Mishnah is talking about the case that the first group comes and says, Reuben killed Shimon. And then the second group comes and says, you guys could not have seen that because you were with us in Paris, right? We were not in Los Angeles. And then a third group comes and tells the second guys, he said, you could not have been seeing them in Paris because you yourself were with us in New York, right? And so on and so forth. And the fourth group comes and says, you, the third group, you were not in New York. You actually were in Tehran. I don't know why we do that, but right? But that's how it works. That's according to Rabbi Yochanan. Fine. So says the Gemara. Menan Emili. How do we know this? Amar Rav Ada Damar Kram. How do we know that? You remember how in the beginning of the Mishnah we said there are three cases that you could disqualify the edut. You could either say the murderer was not in Los Angeles, he was with us in Paris, or you could say the victim, right? He was with, or you could say the actual case, the only case of Zomemim that says you, the testimony, you, the witnesses, you were with us. You could not have seen it in Los Angeles because you were with us in Paris, right? The three cases and only one is Edim Zomemim. How do you know that that's the case? Where do you get that from? Why, if you say, well, you could not have been correct because Reuben was with us in Paris, why is that not Edim Zomemim? You're disqualifying the Edim the same exact way. The Edut, the testimony is 100% disqualified. Right? Now we said it's Tereh v'Tereh. We're saying in logic, you are the same power you have over here, right? So it says, the Gemara like this. Amar Rab Adam, the Amar Kra, second wide line. Hine ed sheker ha'ed sheker ana be'achiv. It's a very interesting language that the pasuk chooses for telling you about edim zomemim. It says v'darshu hashoftim hetev. The judges will research. They will do b'dika, good amount of checking. You know, we have the Gemara Sanhedrin has different ways that they would check the edim and contrast them against each other and so on and so forth, right? Bedikot v'chakirot, the rishot and chakirot, and says the pasuk v'hine et sheker ha'et sheker ana be'achiv. A lot of words over here, right? It's a word salad. Hine et sheker. This is a false testimony, a false witness. Ha'ed. The witness, sheker ana be'achiv. He testified falsely. So why do you need to say ha'ed? Just say, ve'hineh et sheker ana be'achiv. Right? Well, what do you have to say all those words? So it says the Gemara, you know how the Torah wants you to read it. He wants you to read it exactly how it's written. Ve'hineh et sheker. This false witness is ha'ed. The falsified is the ed himself is falsified. Not the edut, but the ed. Right? In other words, in the three categories that we said, Two of them are disqualifying the edut, not the ed. Right? Here, you're not, in edim zomemim, you're not disqualifying the edut. You're saying maybe really Reuben killed Shimon. We don't know anything about that. Maybe Reuben actually killed Shimon on 4th of July in Los Angeles. We're not saying anything about that. You could not have seen it. I'm disqualifying the ed, not the edut. And that I learned from the Chumash. Vehine ed sheker haed. You know what's sheker? The ed is sheker, not the edut. So that tells me, says the Gemara, that the only scenario in which you have edim zomemim is when the second group is disqualifying the first group from being edim, not the actual maaseh. The story could have been same story. You could not have been there. I'm disqualifying the ed, not the edut. And that the Torah says, right? Says the Gemara. So is that clear, yeah? So says the Gemara. It's only when the goof of the edut of these people is knocked out because they could not have been an ed. The Rabbi Ishmael, so that's, period. The Rabbi Ishmael Tanam, in the Bet Midrash of Rabbi Ishmael, they learned a different way of understanding this, because it says, La'anot bo Sarah. By the pasuk of Et Zomem, it says, the Chumash says, Ki yakum et Hamas beish la'anot bo Sarah. To answer, to say something about him, sa'at shetisareh gufa shel edut. It's only edim zomemim if the goof of the edut is taken away. That means, I'm not commenting on the storyline, but fundamentally you could not have seen that because you were not even there. We don't have to debate what happened there in Los Angeles. You were not Los Angeles. That's uprooting the entire edut because you could not have. It's not that you were there. Now let's debate if this happened the way you say it or it happened the way I say it. You could not have even been there, right? That's like uprooting from the roots. That you could not have you can't even open your mouth because you were in a different country, right? They used to do in Kelm, in the yeshiva, they used to train the little 4 or 5-year-olds how to think. They wanted to prepare them for learning. They would say a story to them. They said, look, they said to the little kids, they would say, there was a rock behind the window of the yeshiva in Kelm, and whenever they would say Kaddish in the yeshiva, the rock would jump up and say, Amen, Yeshem Rabba, right? And then it would ask the 4-year-olds, why is this story not correct? Right? So some kids would say, because rocks can't talk. Other kids would say, well, because rocks can't jump. But what's the real answer? Because rocks can't hear. That's where it starts. You're telling me a story that the rock will hear Kaddish and it would jump and then say Amen Yeshem Rabba. What's the root of the whole thing? Why can't even start? It's a non-starter because rocks don't hear. They wanted to train little 4-year-olds how to think, right? So if you think in those terms about the edut, right? Why can't you just stop? Because you were not even there. That's tisareh gufa shel edut. You just know that you knocked out the entire edut because you were in France. It's just non-starter. It's dead on arrival. So that's what the Rabbi Ishmael used to say. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava, that's a cute thing, by the way. Tell it to your kids and try to see what happens. Amar Rava says, if you have a massive structure, if you have a massive building, and the Edim come and say, well, Reuben killed Shimon in the eastern wing of this mansion, right? And the Edim, the second group of Edim say, well, it's like you were in the western wing of the thing with us. Same build, same structure, but you were with us. Right? You were telling me he was in eastern one, that he killed it. You were in the western one. You were on the other side, all together with us. So says the Gemara, you were in the western side of the bira, of the mansion with us. So it says the Gemara, Chazinan, itiktikay b'ma'arav bira, michsa chazu lemizrach bira, en elu zomim. What's the din? The halacha is, we assess, as the Bet Din, whether or not you could actually see what happens in the east wing from the west wing, right? And if you could, then they're not edim zomim, because maybe they saw it. But if you can't see it, then that edim zomim. So the Gemara says, wait a second, Pashita, that's Pashut, what's the Chidush? Right? The Gemara says, no. Maybe you would say, well, maybe their eyesight is 20/20 and the regular people are not. Or maybe theirs is 30/20. They have exceptionally good, extraordinary eyesight, and maybe they saw it, maybe we can't see it. Right? Kamash Malan, the answer is that we're not choshesh for that. If the regular person cannot see it, we deal with it as a regular person, right? And the Gemara says the same exact thing afterwards. Amar Rava, same thing. In the city of Surah, in the morning of Sunday, Reuben killed Shimon. And then a second group of Edim come and say, wait a second, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because in the evening of Sunday, you say he killed him on Sunday morning in the city of Surah. In the evening of the same day, Sunday, you were with us in a different city. Surah and Naharda, they're far apart from each other in Bavel. Right? A regular person cannot get within the same day, from morning to afternoon, from Surah to Naharda. You cannot. So, says the Gemara, Chazinan, if the person could have made it from Surah to Narda, from morning to the evening, then lo avu zomim. Then there would not be edim zomim. But if not, if they couldn't make it from, depending, if they say 5 o'clock a.m. to 10 p.m., maybe there's something to talk about. But if they say 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., then it's impossible. But ilav havu zomim. The one is like Pashita, that's Pashut. What's the Chidush? That's, of course, this is like 2 + 2 = 4. No, Ma'u de Tema, Lechush legamla parcha kamash malan. The Gemara says, the question is, there is a type of camels, the Rashi says, they're so fast running, they would look to an onlooker like they're flying. And if you would have one of those, 1 in a million camels, the Gemara calls it gamla parcha, right? Equivalent of like, a private jet. Right? If you would have a private jet, you would make it from point A to point B. But Arvi Choshesh, that the guy has it, that maybe the guy came with the Gamla Parcha from Surah to Narda. The one says, no, we're not Choshesh for that. That's a very rare thing that the person would get a hold of a Gamla Parcha. So unless he would be saying that, we're not Choshesh for it, and therefore that would be the halacha. We'll continue B'ezrat Hashem in the days to come.